Please welcome to the TEDxHoodCollege stage, Darnell Billups.
Good evening. My name is Darnell Billups, and I love to build things. As a professional, I work in the manufacturing field. It's my job to build things. But sometimes as adults, there's an event or maybe a person in our childhood that inspires us to do what we do as adults. For me, that person was my uncle. He was a blue-collar employee in Philadelphia. He helped build some of the biggest, most iconic buildings in the city, including the Academy of Music, the Leocore Center, and the stadiums for the Philadelphia Eagles and the Philadelphia Phillies. He was prideful about doing the things he did. By building, he had a place in his community, but he also had the pay and benefits and resources to raise a family. One day, I remember when I was much younger, I would always stay up at night and I would be the only one in the house up early in the morning when he would get up. And I remember my aunt handing him his lunch pail with his sandwich, a piece of fruit, and water inside of it. But I would also see him grabbing his hard hat and his reflective vest. And he would leave for the day and then come back home and revel everybody in the stories of his workday. A few years later, before I was ready to go to college, I remember driving with him on I-95. And he extended his arm across to me in the passenger seat, and he said, "Hey, Rock, look over there." That was my nickname, only my uncle called me. So he said, "Hey, Rock, look over there. That's the Eagles Stadium. Do you remember when I helped build that?" And I told him I did remember. What my uncle was experiencing in his work was called job embeddedness. Job embeddedness means all the different factors within your organization and your community that makes you want to stay and be embedded in that occupation and in that job. But what we find now is that a lot of blue-collar employees who work with their hands and work outside, they don't have that same job embeddedness that my uncle had. And that's a problem. It's a problem we should all care about. And why should you care about it? Because blue-collar employees ensure that our day-to-day life that we have, as we know it, functions. The light switches, the seats, the heating and cooling system that keeps this auditorium cool, except me under these lights. All those were built by blue-collar employees and manufacturing employees. They were built, delivered, and installed for your comfort. However, organizations are finding it harder and harder to keep blue-collar employees inside of their organization. And this is for a number of reasons. One reason is that many young people are not interested in the building trades. Another reason is that many of the blue-collar employees who are working in these fields are retiring, leaving with decades upon decades of experience. And the other factor that's making it very hard to find these employees is that we're simply not having enough children in the United States to replace the individuals who are retiring and dying. So one thing we can do to try to fix this, let me back up. So sometimes people look at this situation and there's not enough people to replace individuals, so they say, why can't we just implement robotics or artificial intelligence to fix a problem like this? However, someone who actually works in manufacturing can tell you that robots cannot replace what two human hands can do. So now, what can we do about it? One thing we can do about it is to apply job embeddedness or advanced academic research into this problem. And that's what I've sought to do. Like I said, my uncle inspired me to be in the manufacturing field and to be someone who creates things with their hands. A lot of that started when I started at the Naval Academy as a midshipman, where I studied engineering. And then after that, joining the Marine Corps, where I helped build fiber optic and communications networks in Afghanistan for 20,000 multinational forces. And then after that, having a career in education, where I helped create technology products for about 1 million students in Tennessee. And then leading to my current career in manufacturing. When I started to apply myself and my studies and my doctorate in organizational leadership, I really wanted to focus on manufacturing, but I also wanted to focus on leadership. The one common thing you find in the academic literature and research is that leaders are vitally important to the experience someone has in their workplace. I'm sure everyone can agree. If they have a good boss, they really want to work for that person, and they want to do a good job. So when I came across this job embeddedness in my research, it really made sense to me that this could be something that can not only be applied in manufacturing in the United States, but also with our manufacturing production leaders. And I also discovered no study had ever been done like this in manufacturing in the United States. So I went to carry out this research study, and I sent out my survey and kind of really connected with my network and people I knew in the manufacturing field to try to get as many responses as I could. I actually was only looking for between 200 and 300 responses. I was floored when over 700 people responded to my survey, almost representing the entire United States. Another factor that I saw in my demographics of the results was that veterans made up 30% of my population in my demographic study. Veterans make up 1% of the US population, 12% of the individuals who work in manufacturing, and 30% of the individuals who were in my demographic group for my survey. I also saw that 20% of my responses came from women, which is a growing field or a growing demographic in manufacturing. So what did I find? Well, before I talk about what I found, I do want to talk about job embeddedness to give you a kind of perspective of what that is again. So job embeddedness, like I said in the beginning, are all the organizational and community factors that tie you into an organization. So you can simply think about it like a family tree, where job embeddedness is at the top, and then organizational and community embeddedness are branches from job embeddedness. And below that are several factors that intersect to help maintain that person inside the organization. Part of that is the relationships that you have. Sometimes you hear people say, I have a work husband or a work wife or a buddy. What they're trying to say is they have relationships that they enjoy and they like, and it makes it nicer for them to come to work. But that also goes into our community. When we have relationships with individuals and there's more and more of them, it embeds us into that community and then also into our job. The other thing is that when we have material benefits that the organization gives us, and we also find in our community. So that's pay and benefits, or maybe something that's very particular to you in that community. Maybe it's season baseball tickets to the local major league team. You don't want to leave those because then it's harder to get them the next time when you move back. And the last thing that kind of ties in job embeddedness is that you really have to have the, similar values to the organization and the community that you live in. One example could be an environmentalist may not work for an ExxonMobil or an oil company because their values and what they think is important really don't match. So taking those concepts into my survey and looking at the results, what I found was that there was a relationship between the tie to the organization and someone's intent to turn over or leave their job. So when that organizational tie, so the pay, the benefits, the relationships, when those are strong, you're much less likely to leave. The second thing that I found was that when you both have community embeddedness, so that tie and links to your community, along with that same organizational embeddedness, your turnover intention decreases even more significantly. So the data shows you need to have both. The other thing that I found was that certain parts of community embeddedness, when it came to the number of relationships that you had in the community, was not a good predictor if someone would leave or stay in their job. Now, I did this study this year, post-COVID, so you can probably see or make a relationship to say that because of COVID, relationships in our community are starting to become less and less important to people, which could be an issue for us when we look at this population. So what can we do with this type of information? What we can do with this type of information is we can take it, this same job embeddedness framework that really shows there's a lot of relationships between organizational and community embeddedness and keeping someone in their role. We can take that and continue to apply it to different sectors of the manufacturing industry, but also different groups and populations within manufacturing. Also, organizations can do more and more to try to tie their employees to the community, like offering paid community service hours. Organizations can also ensure that there's pay equity between men and women and different races, because we know that pay and benefits keep people in their roles. Also, communities, based on its research, can do a lot more to make sure our veterans are embedded inside the communities that they decide to live in. Being a veteran myself, I know how important it is when you move from place to place and you transition and you find a good home where you can raise your family. So I'll end with how I started, with my uncle. He helped inspire me to do what I'm doing and led to the research that I conducted. But I also want to give that same inspiration for building and making things to my son. So last year I was able to go to career day with my son. So I sat in the back of the class and they called me up. I went to the front of the class. I had a bag filled with stuff. I went to the front of the class. I dropped it down. I asked my son to volunteer to come up, or voluntold, as we would say. So he walks up to the front of the class. I go in, I pull out my hard hat that I wear for work. I put it on him. Then I reach back down. I got my reflective vest, and I put it on him. Then I reach back down in the bag, and I put on my safety glasses. I put it on him. And he stood there in front of his class, looking like his dad. So I don't know what my son is going to do with his life and his occupation, but I just really hope he finds a way to use his two hands to help build and create things. Thank you.